Hello, welcome back to Emerge, the health podcast for busy, high performing women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Angel Shannon, who is a personal development keynote speaker, board certified nurse practitioner, and founder of Siva Health and the Siva Institute. She draws on over 2 decades of clinical practice and a lifetime study of integrative health and mind body medicine. And she teaches workshops, has her own podcast, and does a lot to really teach people how to be intentional in creating a foundation of specific health practices that will help them achieve better health and continuous personal improvement in every area of their lives. So, Angel, welcome to the show.
Dr. Alex, thank you so much for inviting me. It is a pleasure.
I'm really excited, and I know there's quite a bit more to your story, and you have quite a few certifications and backgrounds. So I'll kind of let you share a little bit. But how did you go from nurse practitioner into moving into what you're doing now, or have you always been more in the integrative world and mind body world?
Oh, such a great question. And the bigger question is how I even got involved in healthcare to begin with, because
Yeah,
it
we
wasn't
can
what I
start there
wanted to
too.
do. I started off really wanting to be an international corporate lawyer. I studied St. John's University in New York and had a friend who was she was in nursing school working in the ICU trauma. And I was just captivated by her stories and said, oh my God, I think that's something I would want to do. I think the beauty of my story really is that my mom is 100% like a lay midwife, naturopath. I mean, not by career, but just by the way she lived. I'm the sixth child of six children. My mom's main thing growing up was ounce of prevention, pound of cure is worth a pound of cure. Good health is the first. Well, before all of these things were like snappy and quotey, my mom was saying that kind of thing. And I grew up going to my grandparents' farm in rural Georgia, 5, 6 acres every single summer, and just living off the land. My grandfather built the house that they lived in and built the house that my great grandmother lived in. So my whole life really was centered around just prevention and wellness. My mom, I mean, of course we went to the doctor for regular routine care, but it took a lot to get there because she would do everything and anything to prevent. So to be absolutely honest with you, it's really been sort of ingrained in my life, really, just integrative healthcare, prevention, root cause medicine. And before we even knew anything about functional medicine and root causes, that's kind of what the elders were doing, back then, is getting to the root of the matter and, really treating what was. So I started out in just regular bedside nursing, critical care, ICU, trauma. I'm here in Maryland. I worked for Hopkins. I worked for the Shock Trauma Center, and did what a lot of people do when they're in those areas. I worked too much, for too long, for too many 12-hour shifts. And I just knew there was more to my story than that. You may know this term. There were, frequent flyers, people who came in and out of the hospital, got to know them by first name, and going on here. Why am I seeing Mr. such and such or Mrs. such and such every month? Heart failure. Why am I seeing these people over and over and over? Dialysis patients or diabetics and whatnot. And so I decided that the impact that I wanted to have would really be more at the community public health teaching level and not in the ICU and trauma. I really wanted to get back to what I grew up on, which is more preventive health. So that was my journey toward becoming a nurse practitioner, because as you know, registered nurses at the undergraduate level are not able to prescribe, diagnose, that kind of thing, treat illnesses. So it required that I go back to graduate school and then pursue the path of advanced practice nursing.
I always find it so fascinating to hear people's stories of kind of the evolution into away from, not that like Western medicine has its place, right?
Oh,
We
absolutely.
have incredible emergency care here, but for so much of what we struggle with as a country in terms of health and chronic
Mhm.
health issues, heart disease, all of that stuff, a lot of it is really coming down to we need a more integrative approach and need more help
Exactly.
beyond the doctor just saying, "Oh, go lose weight." It's like,
Exactly.
wait,
Exactly.
how?
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Closing the gap between the knowing and the doing. There
Yeah.
isn't anything you can't teach yourself online about, lung disease or cancer prevention. We all know that we need mammograms and all of this. We know we need a lower cholesterol, but the question is how, you know,
Yeah.
closing the
Yeah.
gap between the knowing and the doing.
Yeah. And
Mhm,
I know that's where you function and that's where I function too, is like peeling
mhm.
back those layers and even sometimes
Yes.
going beyond the physical stuff into
Oh,
emotional
without a
healing and
doubt.
spirits, like all of it's important. So
Oh, without a doubt. Without a
yeah,
doubt. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, very
Mhm.
true. So I know we talked a little bit before the show. You've recently come across some research around burnout, and I was like, oh, I've been on my own own journey and realization around my own level of burnout. But let's dive into this because I know, and you experienced that well, as well. And
Mhm.
I think burnout can almost be too simplistic for the experience of what it is,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
also like something real. So
mhm,
I'll let you kind of lead into that with some of the research you
yeah.
found recently.
I was just reading an article over the weekend about Gen Xers being, and that then I should say the age group of 40 to 60 being the leading sector of professionals who are leaving the workplace and deciding, and driving the great resignation, I should say. And I am not surprised, though I did find it a little interesting because I thought it would be younger workers who may be able to afford, maybe they're still, maybe living at home with parents or recently launched, or maybe can go back home to living with parents and things like this. But I found it interesting. And then when I, read it a little bit more, I said, yeah, this makes sense. Because what's going on with most Gen Xers, especially those who are in the 40 to 60 age bracket, you probably still have young children or children that are almost launching or most recently launched. And then you probably have an elderly parent or parents that you're either taking care of or for whose, your life is intricately woven into. So you've got to provide some level of care or oversight. So it's the sandwich generation. And it's not surprising that people would say now, it's time for me. I think one of the things the pandemic did do is shine a light on how unsustainable most of our lifestyles really were for the most part. And, it's not surprising that that age group would just say, not only are they saying it's time for me, my turn, but they're also asking what next. And
Yeah.
there's something really, really there's something very profound about getting to midlife, the middle of your life. If you're at 40 and with, statistics being, people live to 80s, 90s, you can pretty much say that that's probably about midlife. And there's just something really profound about that stage in life, which is where I am, where you start really thinking about what's next. I've done this, I've done that, I have all the degrees that I'm going to possibly earn in a lifetime, but now what do I want to experience? And I think that's just where people are. I think that's where people are.
I agree, because oddly, this is something that even though I'm working in the realm of health, like this is a conversation I have with a lot of my clients is, either
Mhm,
they're in careers and realizing it's really not what they're passionate about, or
mhm,
they are burnt out. They've been burning the candle at both ends for so long. And either
mhm,
they've just jumped or they
mhm.
don't know how to take that step into
Right.
what is next. Like they have a picture of what they want it to be, but they're like, how do I let go of the regular paycheck or,
Yes.
whatever it
Yes.
means. There's some fear in doing that.
Mhm,
So
mhm, mhm,
um,
mhm.
go
Yeah.
ahead. It looks like you
Yeah.
have some thoughts there. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And I think the other thing is when you've been socialized or culture, or if you're within a culture um, that says give, always give, be a giver, do for others, serve others. If that's how you were cultured within your community or within your home or what have you, it's really hard to make that emotional leap, that psychological leap to putting yourself first after you've put
Yeah.
yourself last for years and years and years. So for some people, within that demographic, money may be an issue and not wanting to let go of the regular paycheck. But there may be some people, and I know this to be true, who the paycheck isn't even the problem. It's giving themselves permission to say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Or,
Yeah.
it's okay to not do what I'm doing. And especially people who are in the helping and healing professions, people who are in medicine and healthcare, it's really hard to give yourself permission to walk away from being a healer or helper or healthcare worker for so many years to say, now I'm going to go off and open a dive shop or, or something like that, that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with helping or healing people. So there's that psychological leap and that spiritual work that I think you were alluding to, that's also so important in this healing of burnout.
Absolutely. And, speaking from, I shifted from, I was a chiropractor for 10 years and I burnt out and realized that that was like not the path. Plus my wrist was destroyed and I just had a second surgery earlier this year. um, but, there was so much tied to just being willing, even when I was making the decision, realizing like, hey, physically, I just can't do this. It's like, I'm still hanging on to, sorry for everyone, my dog is throwing a bone on the floor right now. I'm still, hanging on to some of my pediatric equipment because I might, go back to that. And it's like, I finally reached that point where like, it's like, no, I'm good. Like
Yeah,
I can let that go just because I have the degree. It doesn't mean that I have to do that. Like
exactly.
if it wasn't the thing. And and I think there's also this thing of like it used to be, I think my parents and grandparents, they're more baby boomer generation, but it was like you have one career for 35 years
Yes,
and then you
yes,
retire. And
exactly.
now it's, people have multiple careers over their life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because we're constantly growing and evolving.
You would think, it's
Yeah.
so true. And the thing is that I think that, like, I like to think about health in terms of seasons. There's 4 seasons in the year. So there's a season of growth, the season of birth and renewal, and then there's the season of letting go. And then, if we just look at nature, like I'm really passionate about like just nature. And if we look at nature and just see how every season there really is something growing, it's just growing at a different pace in a different way. In the middle of winter, you don't see any leaves or any branches, but underneath that ground, there's a lot happening, right? There are roots getting deeper. They're getting nourished by the wet snow and all this kind of thing. So I think just learning that in every season of our life, we're growing in different directions, and different things are getting nurtured. And it's absolutely okay to evolve, as you said, into something new. And it doesn't negate the importance or the value of what you used to do or who you used to be and how you used to identify. It doesn't negate that. It's just a moving into what you've grown into.
Yeah. And it's okay for that to evolve. And I think it's all part of the journey,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
part of where we keep our light shining and all of that is being willing to have the courage to take those leaps and to,
yeah.
recognize when it's time to move on.
Yeah.
Like,
And when we're
or
talking
pivot.
about, right, or pivot, exactly,
Yeah.
because you are using those skills, those, I don't think that any skill learned is a skill wasted. It's just reapplied in a different way. And, to the point of burnout, I think that's when we run the risk of really burning out. It's just that not being able to let go and move into what is really calling at your heart, and knowing that it doesn't mean like jumping off the edge, full throttle. It can mean baby steps. In my coaching work, and they're predominantly women, we talk a lot about baby steps, just daily simple actions that lead you closer and closer to what you're desiring to evolve into, what you're trying to design in your life, and not negating the importance of baby steps, because that's how it all started, right? Baby steps.
Yeah.
You didn't come out of the womb running.
Nope.
Okay.
Many of us wanted to. So I'd love your input here because a lot of my clients I work with all women as well, and a lot of them are, what I would classify as type A, high performers. And we tend to have this like we want things to change and we want it now, and we don't want to slow down and take the baby steps. And so I'm constantly like, they've had a rough week or work has been insane or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, and they're like, oh, well, I did my breathing and I drank my water. And I'm like, great. So
Mhm.
those are foundational baby steps that we're
Yes,
building, and that is
yes.
okay. Like
And
just
that
because you
is
didn't nail the
okay.
eating, it's okay.
Exactly,
But I don't
exactly.
know if you have any input for, women who are listening to this that are like,
Mhm.
oh, but I want it now. Like, how do
Yeah,
we
yeah.
pause and just
Mhm.
live?
That's a great question. I had the joy of participating in a year-long program that was offered by, it's a collaborative effort between Sounds True. I'm sure you're familiar with Sounds True, Tammy Simon, NYU, New York University Mindful, NYU Mindful, I think is the name of that branch, and then Soren Gordimer's Wisdom 2.0. So it was a collaborative effort of that. It was a year-long program called the Inner MBA. It was about cultivating those inner skills to lead for business leaders, healers, what have you, who want to lead from the heart and develop more conscious businesses. One of the things we read in that program was a book by, I can't remember the author, but it has to do with the inner your psychological immune system, right? How your mind is wired. I'll get the title for you and we can put it in the show notes. But learning how our psychological immune system works and what those defense mechanisms are, right? So if you think of your regular immune system, you cut your finger on something, blood cells rush in to heal it so it clots and heals up well and whatnot. And that's all designed to protect the body. But the psychological system has protective mechanisms too, right? What I learned about myself, I'll put myself out there, is that where I'd always thought that I was type A and always thought that I was high performing and things like this, and where I thought was perfectionism was actually something called enoughism. And it's not ever feeling like it's enough, not ever feeling worthy, not ever feeling adequate. And I think underneath all of this perfectionism and type A and whatnot are women, myself included, who have, through a number of different experiences and circumstances and cultural things and whatnot, at the end of the day, have been left feeling like what they do and who they are is not enough. And so they kick it into overdrive and they're doing. And it's just living through the checklist, living the checklist life, right? So I got the MBA, I got the JD, I got the PhD, and it's just check, 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 check. And what's interesting is there are never enough checks until you do the work. And what that program led me to do is to examine the parts of my life where I was over delivering, overdoing. I mean, really overdoing. Got this wonderful business, have a schedule that some people would die for, have telehealth opportunity where I can work from anywhere, thanks to, well, I had telehealth in place before the pandemic, but in any case,
Yep.
now we have it. And why am I still so tired? Why am I laying in bed in the middle of the night thinking about whatever it is I'm thinking about? It's because it's hardwired into my immune system, my psychological immune system, that this is what I need to do. This is how I need to show up. This is what people are expecting of me. And people on the outside, you've got, why are you so, you did it, you got your own business, blah, blah, blah. It's never enough until you do that work. And so what I say to that is, it really requires going deep into this inner landscape and figuring out what is really driving that. Because if we're not careful, we'll just replace one thing with another. Okay. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not doing all of that anymore. But now I'm clocking my hours of how many meditation minutes I've done, or how many steps I've done, or how many, and it's like, cool it. Let's talk about, yeah,
Yeah.
because if not, we're doing, 50 yoga classes, and then we just replace
Mhm.
all of the good stuff, all of the bad stuff with good stuff,
Good
but
stuff.
it's still too much good stuff. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it
Yeah.
does. Yeah, because it's still in that context of, I've gotten into and been talking a lot, 'cause I am in a PhD program. I'm nearly done with this conversation. I'm like, "Ugh." I took a year break to make sure I was doing it for the right reasons. But,
Yeah.
um, you know, I've studied a lot of neuroscience and Joe Dispenza and that, and it's like we have these unconscious patternings and programs that run us,
Mhm.
and you can be doing the good stuff or the bad stuff, but that's still what's driving you until you take the time to slow down and do the work and unearth
Exactly.
whatever that is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And to sit with it,
yeah,
Pema Chodron writes about, placing this tender heart in the cradle of loving kindness. And so a lot of my work is not so much the health coaching, the meal plans and all that kind of thing. What I really work on with my female population is radical self-compassion.
love it.
Radical self-compassion. Because mindfulness is you know, the awareness of where you are in space or time. So what's my surrounding? What's going on around me? What am I feeling? All that kind of stuff. Self-compassion is about, what do I need? What do I need in this moment? Do I need to extend myself a little bit of grace? Do I
Yeah,
need to be patient with myself? Do I need to speak up for myself and say to my boss or manager, I can't do that for you, you know,
yeah,
or I am enough as I am. As I exist today, I am enough. So, it's all that kind of unearthing that I like to get to,
yeah.
because all of the others, the meal plans and that stuff is simple.
Mhm.
And not only that, you can't do that work until you do some of the inner landscape work.
Yeah. So much
Mhm.
of what I do has now shifted in that direction as
Yeah.
well. So it's,
Mm.
I don't know what it is. It's nice to talk to somebody else who's come to the
Right.
same realization because, we can tell you what to eat and we can tell you, what
Exactly.
you should do to sleep and how to exercise. And all. It doesn't make any difference until you
Exactly.
do the inner stuff. Like there's a reason why it hasn't worked up until now.
Exactly. And I'm
That's
not here to
amazing.
say, I will never say that, keto doesn't work or such and such doesn't work, because that's, everyone's different. But I think it's just the point that, people have made millions and millions of dollars on selling, boxed solutions, like, right,
Yeah.
just here it is in a box, take this for 90 days. And it's why so many people are so frustrated and disgruntled and disheartened by the healthcare system, because they've done that. They've spent the money, they've invested in, 90 days worth of whatever it is. I don't want to call anything out because I don't want to get sued, but you know how it is. It's, all
Yeah.
of those off the shelf programs. And it really does require the willingness to go a little bit deeper. Hence the coaching that you do and that I do, and why it's so valuable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And, I think women are starting to recognize that. But if you're listening to this and you are still looking for, that silver lining or that
Yeah,
magical pill or thing
yeah,
that's finally going to work for you.
yeah.
I
It's
hate to be
not
the one to
there.
tell you it's not there.
Exactly.
You gotta
Exactly.
go in
You
and
got to
then
go in. Yeah,
go out.
exactly.
So
Exactly. And if you do get results with things like that, they're very temporary. They're
yeah,
very, very temporary. And I can tell you
yeah,
from just my own lived experience, I've done the fasts, I've done the intermittent fasting, all that kind of thing, celebrated, got on the scale, the 10 pounds. And then it's like, okay, you know, 2 months later, here I am, gaining a pound or two back, because it's really about other kinds of things that you're
yeah,
doing that are working opposite of what your intentions really are.
yeah,
Mhm,
absolutely.
mhm,
And
mhm.
until we get aligned in what we really
Yeah,
want and
yeah,
who we are and how we show up and all of those things,
yep,
willpower
yeah,
only takes you so far.
exactly.
Yeah,
Willpower only takes you so far. And then there's the guilt tripping. And then, we live in a world now where it's looking at what's happening on to Susie over on Instagram, on her page and someone else's. And it really is just about learning how to honor your own path, your own journey, your own story. Whatever that story looks like, that's what it really boils down to. And it is hard work. It's not
yeah,
overnight.
mm-mm,
Unfortunately, it is an investment in terms of time and money. Our healthcare system does not reimburse us, you
oh,
know, adequately for that level of work.
Yeah.
And so I often say to potential clients and people who come that, yeah, this is going to be an investment in your well-being. It's going to be an investment in your health. And, we get to talking about insurance and things like that. But, insurance doesn't pay for your tires to get changed. They don't
Yep.
pay for oil changes. So, that's just how you keep the car running. And this is how you can help keep your health, intact and keep yourself growing and evolving.
Yeah. It's a good
Mhm.
analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
Insurance might catch up someday, but until they care more
Yeah.
about helping people than making money, probably not.
Probably not. Exactly. And that's not to be a pessimist, right? I mean,
No.
you've been around for a long time. I've been
Yeah.
around for a long time. We're on two different sides of, the country. I'm sure, you've got your stories to tell, but I can tell you here on the East Coast, if you've got a diagnosis with an ICD code, they'll pay for that all day long. But if you want to go in and make some real permanent changes, I've been around a long time and I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is. It
But
is. Mhm.
and I will say it saves you a lot of money in the long run if you choose to invest in yourself
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're
before
getting
that.
foundational skills. We talked
Yeah.
about that, just real foundational skills. For me, sleep. One of the things that I
Yeah.
try to do in my practice is talk about just that psychological well-being of, and sleep. So many people are not resting, they're not getting good night's sleep. And for my age group population, Gen X women, if there's transition issues, menopause and perimenopause, we have to talk about all of the foundational wellness things that seem very obvious, but they're not.
Mhm. Yeah.
They're really not. People aren't even aware that, wow, I went a whole day without drinking any water. Or I
Yeah.
went, I was up 3 times last night, tossing and turning, probably not gonna perform at your optimal best, optimal
Probably
level.
not a
Yeah,
good day to do CrossFit or
right.
whatever it is we're pushing ourselves to do.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
CrossFit, yeah.
Mhm. That was the
Yeah,
first thing that came to mind. And,
yeah,
maybe we can transition into kinda this side of things, and then we'll wrap up. We could talk forever, but, I know not
sure.
everyone has
Yeah.
forever to listen to us talk. What I found in my own journey recently, because I went through, we'll just call it burnout, right? And I'm
Mhm,
still, like, seeing the effects of that, 5, 6 years later. I just had a bunch of blood work done, and it was like, I have weird things, like, everything looks great, my thyroid's beautiful, but my reverse T3 is high, and then my
ah,
DHEAS was high, which is the precursor to all our hormones,
right.
has to do
Mhm,
with adrenals, and I'm just like, "But I've changed so much stuff, and yet this is still affecting me." And so I've recognized, like, somewhere in burnout, I lost the emotional capacity to actually push myself.
mm,
And I'm, like, in this interesting place of, like, rediscovering that, but in a balanced way that's not like the crazy, "Oh, I have to go run a marathon."
mhm,
I've been pushing myself cardiovascularly on a spin bike, and that's been interesting, but I do a lot with meditation and kind of work through some chakra stuff as well recently, or energy
mhm,
center work, and
yeah,
I recognize, like, in my 3rd chakra, like, I don't have,
yeah,
one of the things I was doing was symbols, and it's,
mhm,
strength is that's where our inner
yes,
strength comes from. And I was
mhm,
like, wow, that thing's just totally gone. And
yeah,
but now it's a question of like, okay, what does that look like? So for women in that kind of transitionary point, and I love your perspective on like, when do we pull back? When do we push? And how do we kind of find that place where there's balance of, we want to live. It's like, I don't want to be in
mhm,
hiding and, kind of
mhm,
like this
mhm,
weak little whatever I've been the last
shell,
few years. But
mhm,
also we do need to take time to heal and,
mhm.
and have that work again. So I'd love your perspective on all that because I've had my own.
Yeah, that is so like really, really interesting because you mentioned just this feeling where I think the heart of that is I don't even have it within me. I don't have the capacity to even push myself. And I think that is like the heart of it, right? Like when
Mhm.
you know that because your mom, you're running a business, you've got, you know, all of your clients and whatnot, like we're like little old lady in the shoe. We've got all of these people, right, whose lives we're managing, right, including our own. And you've pushed through things before in your life, right? So it's not hard to do. But when you realize you don't even have it in you to do that, that is when it really does come down to I think about just my own garden. Like when I look at these tender little plants, right, that I've put out too early, maybe they got way too much sunshine, like this chamomile. I've recently put this out way too early and it got burnt, right? And I'm thinking, here we go with this chamomile again. Why is it? It's because it got too much of something, right? Does it even have the capacity to come back? And I looked in the center of this plant and there's just this tiny little area of green, tiny little area. And all the rest of it looks like it's gone. But I know that if I just nurture that one little area, just give it enough water, put it right on the shelf, leave it alone, give it time, it will begin to, blossom out and grow out more shoots and things like this. So I say that the awareness of where that one little area is in your life that you can nurture, that you can be really kind and compassionate and patient with, because there's all this other stuff that feels like it's so necessary, where it's just this one little area. So I always go back to that root chakra, just back to that root chakra work. And you and I, we really could talk forever because we have so much in common.
Yeah.
But I just think that root chakra work is so important. Just really, and if I could say root chakra, but also, third eye stuff, intuition. Yeah. Nurturing that intuition so much. I do a lot of gemstone work and I set my gems out and charging and all this other thing. But I think it's just the knowing and honoring that intuition so that this is connected to that. And there's a direct line so that you intuitively know what you need to do at that root and foundational level. And I think that anything that aligns with root chakra work, when you're feeling like that, is time well spent. That's my thought.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And for listeners who, maybe this is new, I've talked a little bit about these concepts, but I'm kind of newer in practicing it myself and kind of working with my clients on it. And I find it really powerful because so the root is, the seed of creation and there's lots that happens there. And then our third eye, or I call it the seventh center, is, where the pituitary gland sits. And so that gland is responsible for like all of our hormones doing what they're supposed to do.
Exactly.
So if either of those are out of whack, like we got problems.
Yep. We have problems. Yep. Yeah. And to your point about creativity, getting back to that and creativity for its own sake, whether it's drawing, painting, I started doing vision boards again. I'm a big vision board person. So I started doing vision boards again and just cutting out and coloring and all that kind of stuff and aligning that with what I want to do with my life and the direction that I want to go. Very, very creative, creative visualization practices are really super important and very healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Or like I've been playing the violin since I was about 5 and haven't played it much, but I've recently picked it back up and just started doing that again. Learn something new. Like there's all kinds of ways to tap into
for its own sake. For its own sake. Not that you're gonna open up a school or open up a business, teaching violin, or you're going to be
do it to enjoy it.
Right, do it just for the sake of enjoying. You're not going to go to.
You don't have to be good at it. You don't have to like. No one's going to judge it. You're not selling your art. My art still looks like a 5th grader's, and I'll sit down and draw with my kid. It's great.
Yeah.
So. All right, so I'm bringing this full circle because we really could go forever. We have this concept of burnout, and I think we've talked about it in a much deeper way than anyone would ever discuss anywhere else, which I'm totally okay with because that's how I roll. Right. Just to kind of recapping, if you're in this place of feeling burnt out, knowing you need to transition, finding that courage to change, maybe you're feeling like me and just like, holy crap, I've lost the ability to push myself. And, I'm in this exploration of like, am I healed enough to do it? Or do I need to spend more time there? Like all of that stuff. What are kind of the maybe 3 things that you would give someone to start looking at? We talked about some of them, but let's just line it out.
I always say start with just a little bit of everyday oasis time, 10-minute retreats every day to pause and breathe and just stop. Just, even if it just takes putting it as a timer on your Fitbit, 10-minute breaks, because what you want to do is drive down this adrenal, this overdrive, all of the stuff that's firing off from your adrenals or not firing off or what have you. Give yourself those 10-minute pauses throughout your day. If it's every 2 hours, every 4 hours, whatever the case may be, that's number one. Number two, try to get yourself some good sleep, really, really good sleep. I mean, literally turning things off. If you have to incorporate your family or friends to help you be accountable to that, just, okay, 9 o'clock is it. I'm shutting it down. I'm shutting it off. Even if you can't go to sleep, just getting your brain trained towards rest, right? So I'm really big on rest, rest, rest. And then the other thing is just at the real foundational level, look at your foods, your nutrition, things that are working against what you're trying to do. White sugars, artificial sugars, caffeines, things like that, just little by little. I'm not talking about going cold turkey, but try your best just to wean down certain things. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be fighting against yourself, right? And so when we're just pushing and pushing and pushing and not resting and not feeding ourselves at that foundational level with good stuff, we're working against ourselves ultimately. And I also say, do it in community. Have these conversations with other women. Be honest and open, because I'll tell you, you can achieve, massive results in your life when you are working with others and people who are honest and authentic and saying, hey, look, I feel the same way. Because then you can start holding each other accountable, reminding each other, being gentle with each other. I think too often we women have been cultured to believe we've got to go it alone. We've taken on a lot of masculine energies, which is, forge ahead and keep going and, all of that. And women historically throughout the world, many different cultures, women have always been about community. We've always done things together, and we've got to get back to that. Is learning how to be open and authentic with each other and reach out and be a source of support to each other.
Yeah. Just a little total side note. I implemented like a group aspect to what I do kind of at the beginning of this year. And I work one-to-one with everybody, but that group call, man, like Fridays,
Yeah.
we all look forward to that. It is like,
Yes.
it sets us up for such a great weekend because it's just something about coming together and recognizing you're not alone. I talk to so many women, they're like,
Exactly.
the biggest thing I get from that is that it's not just me. Like I'm not alone in
Exactly.
this. So
Exactly. You're not alone. And that's
huge.
something I did too, at the start
Yeah.
of the pandemic, is just started a virtual community of women. Small steps, daily
Yeah.
small steps. It's not about losing weight and all this other type of thing. It's just being really, really good to ourselves, learning how to be good to
For
ourselves.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
so important.
Mhm,
Awesome.
mhm.
Well, Angel, thank you so much for, like I said, we could go forever. I think
Thank
this has
you.
been
It's
a
been
great
such a
combo.
pleasure. Yes,
Yeah.
let's
And
stay
just
in touch. Mhm.
absolutely. And real quick for our listeners, how can they connect with you? I know you've got a
Yep,
website, but
yep,
where else can they
absolutely.
find you?
Yep, can find me on the website, www.sivahealthgroup.com. Also at www.getfitandfunctionalforlife.com. That's where our Gen X women only community lives. That's where we hang out and do some good stuff together. We've got a women wine and wellness event coming up at the end of June. So people can check that out as well. And then if you're on LinkedIn, I hang out over there at Angel V Shannon, linkedin.com//Angel V Shannon. That's where you can find me. Yep.
Great. I'll put all that in the show notes. Well,
Sounds great.
again, thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Enjoy the rest of your day and let's stay in touch.